Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about Russia. If you've been following the channel, you'll know that one of the highest profile individuals in the war in Ukraine is a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is the founder and leader of the Russian mercenary group Wagner. Russia have been using the Wagner Group to spearhead a lot of their advances into Ukrainian territory, and Yevgeny Prigozhin has posted a number of controversial videos on Telegram in which he's identified and called out a number of the military top brass in Russia, and he's also repeatedly complained about a lack of support for the Wagner Group. However, things have now taken a serious turn, and Yevgeny Prigozhin has accused Russia of launching missiles which have killed a number of Wagner operatives, and it's now been reported that the Wagner Group have turned on the Russian top brass and want to topple the military leaders. Wagner are reported to have taken over 2 Russian cities, and there are now concerns that Yevgeny Prigozhin is attempting to lead a coup against President Putin. In response to these actions, President Putin has now given an emergency address to the Russian nation, in which he's accused the Wagner Group of betrayal and treason and has vowed to crush any form of uprising. So in today's video, I'll go through the details as to exactly what Yevgeny Prigozhin has been doing. We'll have a look at the life story of how this former hot dog seller managed to rise right to the top of the Russian military and is now on the verge of trying to take over the Russian army. We'll go through the details of President Putin's statement, and then finally today I'll wrap up with my summary as to what I think is likely to happen.
The head of Russia's Wagner Group mercenary organization is, for the first time, publicly rejecting Moscow's official justification for the war in Ukraine, saying the reason for the invasion was based on lies, running directly counter to President Putin's own statements, and marking a new milestone in the months-long feud between the Wagner founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and Russia's top military brass. This is part of Prigozhin's video, which was posted on Telegram.
Why was the war needed? The war was needed so that a handful of scumbags could have a blast and get PR attention showing how strong the army is. The war was needed not in order to return Russian citizens to our bosom, and not in order to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. It was needed for one star with additional embroidery, so that one mentally sick man could look good on a coffin pillow. Shoigu lives by the principle that a lie must be horrific for people to believe it. That's when the lies come.
Prigozhin's referring to Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu, a constant target of his criticism. He's often accused Shoigu and other military leaders of incompetence, but rejecting the core reasons for the war is new for Prigozhin. He says Shoigu's deceiving President Putin, and that the war was also used to enrich the ruling elite. Prigozhin also specifically uses the word war in the video, not the phrase special military operation used by the Kremlin. Prigozhin's enjoyed unusual freedom in publicly criticizing Moscow, although not Putin himself, whom he relies on for support.
Over the course of the last 12 hours, Yevgeny Prigozhin has posted a number of videos on Telegram accusing the Russian military of killing Wagner operatives and stating that 25,000 Wagner fighters are en route to oust the leaders of the defense establishment in Moscow. In one of the posts he stated, "Those who destroyed our lads, who destroyed the lives of many tens of thousands of Russian soldiers, will be punished. I ask that no one offer resistance. There are 25,000 of us and we are going to figure out why chaos is happening in the country," he said, promising to tackle any checkpoints or air forces that got in Wagner's way. At around 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, Moscow time, he issued another message saying his forces had crossed the border from Ukraine and were in the southern city of Rostov. He said they were ready to go all the way against the top brass and to destroy anyone who stood in their way. At around the same time, the Russian news agency TASS quoted Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov as saying all Russian main security services were reporting to Putin round the clock on the fulfillment of his orders with respect to Prigozhin. Security was being tightened in Moscow, TASS said, focusing on what is called the capital's most important government sites and infrastructure. These messages followed earlier statements from Prigozhin, in which he said that the Kremlin's rationale for invading Ukraine was based on lies concocted by the army's top brass. It's been reported that the Russian SFB Domestic Security Service has opened a criminal case against Prigozhin for calling for an armed mutiny, a crime punishable with a jail term of up to 20 years. Army Lieutenant General Vladimir Alekesyov issued a video appeal asking Prigozhin to reconsider his actions. Only the president has the right to appoint the top leadership of the armed forces, and you are trying to encroach on his authority, he said. Army General Sergei Surovikin, the deputy commander of Russian forces in Ukraine, who's previously praised Prigozhin, said in a separate video that the enemy is just waiting for our internal political situation to deteriorate. Before it is too late, you must submit to the will and order of the People's President of the Russian Federation. Stop the columns and return them to their permanent bases, he said. The administration of the Voronezh region on the M4 motorway between the regional capital Rostov-on-Don and Moscow said on Telegram that a military convoy was on the highway and urged residents to avoid using it. Unverified footage posted on social media showed a convoy of assorted military vehicles, including at least one tank and one armoured vehicle on flatbed trucks. Footage on channels based in Rostov-on-Don showed armed men in military uniform skirting the regional police headquarters in the city on foot, as well as tanks positioned outside the headquarters of the southern military district. In another video, Prigozhin confirmed that he had led his fighters out of Ukraine to Rostov and posted footage of himself seemingly relaxed, conversing with two generals at the headquarters of Russia's huge southern military district. The video showed him telling the generals, "We have arrived here, we want to receive the chief of the general staff and Shoigu. Unless they come, we'll be here, we'll blockade the city of Rostov and head for Moscow," which appeared to be a reference to the military convoy trying to make the 750-mile drive towards Moscow, ostensibly to topple the military leadership. Russian local officials said a military convoy was indeed on the main motorway, linking the southern part of European Russia with Moscow, and warned residents to avoid it. In response to the Wagner uprising, Russian President Vladimir Putin has vowed to crush what he called an armed mutiny. In an emergency televised address, Putin said the excessive ambitions and vested interests have led to treason and called the mutiny a stab in the back. It's a blow to Russia, to our people, and our actions to defend the fatherland against such a threat will be harsh. All those who deliberately stepped on the path of betrayal, who prepared an armed insurrection, who took the path of blackmail and terrorist methods, will suffer inevitable punishment, will answer both to the law and to our people, he said.
Today, the fate of our people is being decided. We need the consolidation of all forces. Everything has to be discarded that weakens us. Anything that can be used and is being used to subvert us from within. And therefore, any actions that split us is a betrayal of your people, betrayal of the comrades that are fighting on the front line, a knife in the back of our people.
According to Russian media, a plan known as Operation Fortress has been activated in the city of Rostov-on-Don, which lies about 100 kilometres east of the Ukrainian border. Essentially, it's a plan for personnel to be in full readiness. The plan has also reportedly been activated in Moscow, which would ensure Kremlin buildings are protected. While the exact actions are a state secret, there are reports that entrances and exits to the Interior Ministry building are currently blocked and military vehicles have been positioned in some Moscow locations. Yevgeny Prigozhin was born on the 1st of June 1961 in St. Petersburg. At 18 years of age, he was caught stealing and given a suspended sentence, and 2 years later he was convicted of robbery and fraud and sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. He spent the following 9 years in prison but was later pardoned and was released in 1990. Immediately following his release from prison, he sold hot dogs alongside his mother in St. Petersburg. And during the 1990s, he was involved in the establishment and expansion of a variety of different businesses following the breakup of the Soviet Union. In 1995, Prigozhin entered the restaurant business and founded a floating restaurant on a boat that became one of the most fashionable dining spots in the whole of Russia. And it was whilst running this restaurant that he first became associated with President Putin and was later referred to as Putin's chef.
Yevgeny Prigozhin is a complex man with a complex history and very complex ambitions. He served a 10-year sentence for violent crimes that he committed in St. Petersburg as a young man. He worked in hard labor camps, and when he came out, he kind of transformed himself into this kind of mafia entrepreneur.
One of his first ventures was a catering company that fed the Kremlin. Prigozhin became known as Putin's chef. Cooking up disinformation came next with the Internet Research Agency, a troll farm which was instrumental in Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. election. Prigozhin has now transformed into a warlord under the auspices of Vladimir Putin. He's used social media to accelerate his brand. Videos show him overseeing training sites. He appeals to new recruits with ultra-nationalist propaganda.
Guys, sign up for Wagner Group private military company. World War III is already nigh.
On the battlefield, he flaunts the coffins of dead Ukrainian soldiers. And he brazenly calls out Russia's Ministry of Defense for the death of his fighters, hurling insults at the defense minister and chief of staff and calling them out by name.
We have a 70% shortage of ammunition. Shoigu, Gerasimov, where is the ammunition? Look at them.
So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video really to give you news of this breaking story. Throughout the whole of the war in Ukraine, Yevgeny Prigozhin and his private military company Wagner have been high profile. This guy and his band of mercenaries have been at the forefront of all of the attacks by the Russian army. And as the war has gone on, Prigozhin has got more and more controversial, more and more outrageous, and he's been posting videos blaming a lot of Russian top brass in the military for the failings of the war in Ukraine. However, these latest developments appear to show that Yevgeny Prigozhin now has aspirations to take over the whole of the Russian military. Now, this is quite incredible because, as we saw earlier in the video, Yevgeny Prigozhin was actually imprisoned for a long period of time. And then when he came out of prison, he was selling hot dogs and then became a chef and has gone down a very, very unusual route to get to where he is today. He doesn't have a military background. He's not a general in the army, so he doesn't have any experience. Of leading a large military force. But it seems that he's now decided that he would be better placed than all of the Russian generals to make decisions as to what's going to happen in the Russian army. Now, this may well have been his master plan from day one in terms of what he wanted to do, but I think the way he's going about it is very, very dangerous. Because Wagner have now basically done an about turn. They've come back out of Ukraine and are now making moves towards Moscow. They're reported to have taken over the city of Rostov and are now thinking about going all the way to the Kremlin. Now, as you saw earlier in the video, President Putin has had a complete sense of humour failure over this action. And he's come out on Russian television and stated that this is a betrayal, a knife in the back, and that everybody involved in this will be punished. Now, up until this point, President Putin has been a major supporter of Yevgeny Prigozhin. He's let all of the things that Prigozhin posted on Telegram ride. He hasn't tried to pull him in. He hasn't tried to stop him. He's been letting him get on with it. And I think the main reason for that was that the Wagner Group are proving to be very useful in some of the battles in Ukraine. However, the fact that Wagner have now done an about turn and are retreating from Ukraine and moving back towards Russia isn't sitting very well with President Putin. And the fact that Yevgeny Prigozhin is now talking about a military coup taking over the Russian army, that is very unlikely to be something that Putin will support. Because Prigozhin is a wild card. He's a maverick. This is a guy who's difficult to control. So the last thing that President Putin wants is to give him full control of the army, because that would put Prigozhin in an extremely powerful position, and he would then be one step away from being able to take over the whole of Russia. So it will be very interesting to see what happens over the course of the next couple of days. But I think it's extremely likely that President Putin will want to stamp out this military coup. He is definitely not going to allow Yevgeny Prigozhin to take over the army and to be in control of all of those forces. That will not happen. The big question is, what is going to happen to Yevgeny Prigozhin and Wagner? Will they be sent back into Ukraine to get back into the fight and get on with the job that they were hired to do? Or does Yevgeny Prigozhin have higher aspirations? Is he looking for a senior post in the military? And if that is his goal, the big question is whether or not President Putin will support that, or whether he will consider Yevgeny Prigozhin to be the end of his useful time from a Russian perspective. And if that is the situation, it'll be really interesting to see whether or not Yevgeny Prigozhin posts any further videos onto Telegram. So as I said, I wanted to post this video really to give you up-to-the-minute information as to what's happening. Hopefully you found this video useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end. And here's something to put a smile on your face.